they call Felix Romano.
Yes.
Felix Kwakye Ofosu. We have been expecting him. He's finally
putting people on tenterhooks. Then you put up 2 eyes in some corner and the boys are waiting.
I don't know how come he dropped the list at 1 a.m. Felix, good morning and thank you very much for joining us.
Oh, well, good morning, Winston.
When I saw the list, I had to go back to your
place. You share a first name with my first son, Winston.
Oh, okay. Oh, that's nice.
Named after the great Winston Churchill.
I see.
That's a very important one.
Yeah, but Felix, Churchill was what they call a conservative.
Yes, buddy.
So, Felix,
he's nonetheless a great historical figure. Yeah.
First of all, when is your own appointment? I've been seeing the list.
You may have to direct that question too.
No, but you are the one issuing.
Well, I merely convey the president's decision. So, but I don't make the decisions. Yeah.
Is it that likely that your acting becomes substantive?
Well, that would depend on what the president believes.
Because now that you have a deputy presidential spokesperson.
I cannot second guess the president at this moment. So we may all have to wait.
Okay.
Until he makes his final decision, and I would have the honor of conveying that decision to the Ghanaian people.
Have you sent the last one to Parliament?
I think that the deadline is today.
Yes.
And from all indications, the deadline will be met. So as and when it is met, I will make it known to the Ghanaian public on behalf of the president.
We promised the people that you are going to read out the final list here.
Yeah, well, you went a bit ahead of yourself because I'm not in a position to do so because I do not have any list as I speak to you.
You don't have any list?
No.
Nothing has been sent to the speaker?
Not at the moment. Like I said, the deadline will be met as and when.
Which means you know?
Well, I'm not in a position to disclose anything that I have not been told. Yes.
You are not in a position to disclose
anything that I have not been told.
Anything that you've not been told to disclose?
Absolutely.
But you know that the list is ready.
What I do know is that the president has taken steps to ensure that he fulfills the promise he made to Ghanaians, that within 14 days, at least his substantive cabinet positions would have been filled. That is on course to be met later today. And that's all I can say for now.
So today it will be sent to the Speaker of Parliament?
Yeah, it has to, because the president intends to fulfill his promise.
And if it is going to be sent to the Speaker of Parliament, Parliament sits today.
Yes. Don't forget I'm an MP, so I'm going to Parliament right from here.
Yes, and so the Speaker of Parliament, I'm sure once he gets into Parliament, he would read a communication from the President.
Yes, it is the first order of business anytime there's a communication from the President.
Okay.
In Parliament, yeah.
So at 10 a.m., the Speaker would read that. If Parliament
I'm not sure about 10 a.m.
But I'm going to say if Parliament sits at 10 a.m.
But yes, that is definite, but I'm not sure that
it will be read at 10 a.m.
We'll read it exactly at 10 a.m. That I cannot promise. If it happens to be the case that by 10 a.m. the Speaker has received it, why not? I'm sure he will do what he has to do. Anytime he receives it, to the extent that Parliament is sitting, he will read it.
Is anybody who is going to be appointed or on that list aware?
Well, at least I do know that shortly before the list is dispatched, courtesy demands that they are made aware. You don't want to hear that you've been appointed on the airways. I don't think that it makes for proper governance.
So they all know now?
Well, I don't know whether they know now. What I do know is that before the communication is sent, they will be made aware.
Felix, I realize that because you have become the one who breaks news these days, a lot of people are having a discussion with you.
Yes,
tell them you are here now.
Sure.
You're very good friend, the late Sir John said whenever he was on radio, his hometown people were sending him messages. But
don't have to verify.
Let them wait.
There are some who actually send you a message and call you to tell you that they've seen you on TV. Yes, anyway. I'll control that. Please go ahead. Yeah.
So it's been 2 weeks already. What are the major things the president has been doing in the last 2 weeks beyond appointments?
Well, I think that the situation that the president met required some urgent steps to be taken. After the elections, we went straight into the transition process, which essentially entailed taking over the reins of government and knowing exactly what the situation is. But as you may be aware, the transition is such that the information we get is only up to October. And therefore, the vast chunk of the last quarter of the year does not have any information provided on exactly what may have transpired in government. So there's a certain void that needs to be filled. Right after the transition, when the president was sworn in, we discovered that there were major threats that needed to be eliminated immediately. Otherwise, we would face some crisis. One of them was the power situation. It was a very fragile power situation. We all knew in opposition, they formed a key part of our campaign, that the energy sector was in a mess. The sector was burdened with excessive debt. that was basically strangling the life out of the sector. IPPs were owed in excess of $2.5 billion. Several other players in the sector were owed. There were problems with the purchase of fuel to fire thermal plants. There were issues with efficiency in the delivery of some energy sector utilities, and therefore action needed to be taken. Now, the most pressing concern related to some maintenance that the West African Gas Pipeline needed to carry out on its pipeline. This was to have been done in October last year. The government of the day asked that they defer it to the first quarter of this year. That is January 20th. In fact, that would have been yesterday, if I'm not mistaken. Now, West African Gas Pipeline obliged, but the assurance was that those 4 months will be used to purchase adequate fuel to ensure that by the time that the pipelines were shut down, we would have alternative source of fuel to power our thermal plants. During the transition, it came to our attention. We sought assurances, and we were given every assurance that everything had been done to ensure that we don't go into that difficulty with power. Only for us to take over the reins of power, and on the first day, discover that we do not have fuel to fire the thermal plants. The West African Gas Pipeline Company was also ready to carry out their maintenance, and it required. You recall that the very first day that President Mahama took office, we had to call an emergency meeting at 10 a.m. to discuss the matter. And following from that, a technical team was set up to resolve. As I speak to you, I can tell you that adequate supplies of fuel have been purchased. Some have already been delivered, others are on their way. And thankfully, we managed to secure a deal with WAPCO to further defer the maintenance work on the pipeline to February. We are confident that that period will give us enough time to make the necessary arrangements, and we are determined to ensure that we do not inflict any power outages.
So you say you've secured fuel?
Yeah, some of it has arrived.
Some of it has arrived.
Some on its way.
Because West Africa Gas Pipeline is postponed for 2 weeks.
For 2 weeks. So that would be February 3rd. February 3rd, yes.
February 3rd. So
yes.
Would we have adequate fuel?
Yes. Everything indicates that we'll have adequate fuel. Some of it has arrived already.
Earlier, there were concerns that you needed 4 weeks to have these.
That is true, but we had to bridge that time because of the urgency of the situation. So we had to bend over.
What about the treatment? Because the
the arrangements as
some of energy designated was concerned about treatment. Yes,
that treatment takes about 2 weeks. So all of that was factored into the arrangements that we would avoid the situation. There are other threats further along the line that may come up unrelated to fuel. But we have what it takes.
So there will not be
the concerns.
Any doomsday between February and March.
Certainly not related to issues to do with fuel. Yes, one cannot divine what may happen to the system.
You know, in the past we've had localized challenges.
Yes,
when sometimes we've also been very much aware that these localized challenges may not be localized challenges. The clarification is that there will not be doomsday in relation to fuel. What of fuel? So if there's a problem, it's localized challenges.
Yeah, it may be due to other developments, but
not the localized challenges we saw years ago.
Well, as for localized challenges, I don't think that even up until now we can say that they don't exist because it's a vast chain of machines and other systems.
No, last year, when we were told it was localized challenges, we here on the Super Morning Show
discovered that it was not there,
and we said it was fuel challenges.
Sure. That is fine.
I mean, we brought evidence to show that.
Sure, you are within your rights to dig into the matters and ensure the truth emerges. But what I'm saying is that we met a situation. We have acted swiftly to ensure that we avert that. The other challenge that we had was the issue about feeding senior high school students. You recall that the schools requested that the reopening dates be postponed in order that some arrangements can be made to feed them. Government declined and said that the schools should open nonetheless. So within the first week, I think on the third day of President Mahama's presidency, I was in a meeting with the Chief of Staff together with the head of GS, the Chief Director from the Ministry, and a rep from the senior high schools who told us that the situation was dire. They didn't have food. So we had to quickly mobilize. I think you heard earlier this week or late last week that some directive had been given for some rice to be evacuated to the schools. As I speak to you, I can disclose that up to 200 million Ghana cedis has been released to address that difficulty. I've seen the swift advice, so the money has gone.
Let's talk about the 200 million Ghana cedis. After that discussion, we got information subsequently from the former education minister that says he personally facilitated the release of 200 million Ghana cedis before the 7th of January, of which headmasters were paid 40 million cedis to buy perishables, and over 100 million paid to suppliers, as in the debt owed suppliers. Was this
well, as of the time that we took office, no such payments are gone. Indeed, if payments had gone, I don't think that the schools would have bothered, to come to us to seek further assistance. So this has been done to ensure that problem is bridged.
So the schools have received the money?
Yes, they have received the money. But ultimately, it is the policy of government to ensure that the purchase of food items is decentralized, because the centralization creates a sort of problem. Huge monies are owed over time, and then we are held hostage by suppliers who make demands for their money. So ultimately, it will be decentralized to make sure that the schools themselves do the purchasing on the local market. We expect that will be more efficient. They do not have to rely on a center.
Let's get a decentralization.
Sure.
The headmasters will be giving money.
Together with Bezos, exactly.
And they would buy everything
that they need, of course.
As it used to be in the days when we were paying boarding fees.
And you find that those days, we didn't have this sort of difficulty. You may have localized challenges. Let me borrow your balance in reference to the sector. You may have localized challenges in that one or two schools may have difficulties at any time, but you will not have a general problem where all schools are the mercy of government or other benevolent entities because of widespread shortages in food. Yeah.
This 200 million, is that all the amount of money?
No. I think that is far more than that, but it will go a long way to address, even as government takes the opportunity. And mind you, this is a government that has been in power for barely 2 weeks. So I'm sure you agree that will require a bit of time to be able to assess the situation in full and devise mechanisms to address them. But the 200 million Ghana cedis should go a long way to help them bridge the gap, at least within the first quarter of this year.
There was also rice and maize that was being distributed. Have we sent these to all?
Yes, as far as I know, many schools have received it, if not all of them. Yeah, but in due course, all of them should receive as much as they need.
Now, the thinking was that this shouldn't be an issue that will crop up at this time.
Yes.
Because ordinarily, if the minister says he has released money and the people say they have received a part of it, the rest of it was what was supposed to get to the people.
Yeah, but remember, the point is that these are experienced operators. These schools know how the system operates. If they had received the money and were sure of receiving the rest, they would not make an urgent call to government to intervene. Why would the GS Director General lead a team to the flag staff? Why would representatives of CHAS meet the Chief of Staff and demand prompt action to address the difficulty if indeed the things that our friends in the previous government say have been done were done?
And you don't think, because that's one of the issues that have come up, this is an issue because these headmasters opposed the centralization. You don't think it's a way to bring back that conversation to the front burner?
But why would they?
Because already now you're saying government has made a decision officially.
But
re-centralize.
In fact, it was a key theme.
True.
Of the education minister of President Mahama. He had disclosed long before the elections that he believes in decentralization of the procurement in relation to feeding and other activities of the schools. So it's something that he had always wanted to do. Number two, I'm not sure why headmasters would starve students just to drive home a point. I don't think that it would be a fair reflection.
We're told that some schools during the decentralized system had incurred debt on their own, some up to 50 million.
Yes, because government still has to finance it. Understand me? Decentralization does not mean that the schools will finance it themselves. It is government that has to give them the money. So it is entirely possible that they buy these food items on credit, but at least it is a more efficient system that ensures that whatever shortages may occur would not be widespread, but they will be localized, again, to hack back to your energy balance. So that's the schools owe some suppliers at the local level. In and of itself, is not surprising. It is not unusual. I'm sure that at every point in time, some amounts will be owed on any number of issues. But we believe that is a more efficient system. It's a better way of doing things. It eliminates the incidence of corruption and profiteering. That because what happens is that when it is centralized, it's only a few people well connected who get these contracts to do the supplies. And you know what happens over time. I mean, how many times have suppliers not invaded the buffer stock company to demand payment because of this sort of arrangement? But if it is localized, the schools go to the local market, depending on what their needs are at any point in time, and make the purchases. If they have arrangements with suppliers to do so on credit and have governments reimburse over a period, I think that is an arrangement that will bode well for everybody.
Beyond the firefighting that you have to do now,
yeah,
the promise was that we'll have a national conversation about education in this country.
Yes, that is true.
When is that?
That is on the case. Indeed, President Mahama has reiterated that any time that he has met a delegation that has called on, that will be done in due course. Indeed, he has discussed it with the IMF, with other development partners, with CHAS and all the others that have called on him. So it is something that he remains committed to. Indeed, there's also the National Economic Dialogue, which may perhaps precede the national education because of the exigency
and the connections that can come out of it.
So all that remain on the case.
But we don't have timelines for those.
No, I don't. As of now, no date has been set. But it will be pretty soon.
Still within the 120 days.
Absolutely, it will be pretty soon. Yes, because these are urgent things that need to be done. Because the economy is in a parlous situation, a parlous state. I beg your pardon. Our education is in shambles. I mean, there are simply too many problems. And government is determined to kickstart the process of addressing those. The way that we think we can do it is to achieve consensus around some of the critical issues in terms of funding, structuring, curriculum, what have you. When it comes to the economy, there are things that need to be done. By all means, because of the situation, there are some decisions that ought to be taken. And therefore, we need to achieve the buy-in of critical stakeholders to be able to do that.
Talking about consensus, because when it comes to education, for instance, there's also the school of thought out there that free SHS should be targeted. You, Felix,
absolutely
can pay your child's school fees through secondary school. Why should the state pay for you? I can pay my child's school fees through secondary school. So there's a conversation that why don't those who can afford pay? Or why don't, for instance, make day schools free and then boarding fee paying, but then those who cannot afford are giving scholarships to go through? So is it the case that if at the end of these meetings, the general consensus is a movement away from the current system, the president would be bound by it, or like you said in your manifesto, free SHS stays?
Of course. You see, I'm happy that you brought this up. One of the problems that we have faced over the period is the phenomenon of shallow populism. You see, it has become very difficult to state an opinion on some of these matters because you'll be pigeonholed immediately and things will be said about you. Now, if we are going to overcome some of the difficulties that we face, we are going to have to open up the system and take on board various views and suggestions. That school of thought that you alluded to is one that is worth considering. It should not be dismissed offhandedly simply because somebody thinks that there's some political capital to be made from saying that you've implemented free SHS. There is a problem that we all admit. Indeed, beyond the feeding issue, very early on in this government, I think on the second or third day, CHAS issued a statement indicating that they were owed close to 3 billion Ghana cedis in arrears relating to free senior high school. So we are implementing a policy that we are not funding, essentially. And how do you explain it? I had a nasty experience during this campaign. Do you know that there's a prominent school in my constituency?
I know.
Perhaps the most prominent amongst all the
I know that school.
Yes. I was shocked to learn that they have a student population of over 4,000 students. I was shocked to learn that last year, the whole of last year, they were giving 9,000 Ghana cedis to manage the school. 9,000 Ghana cedis for 4,000 students.
Entire year.
There are days when they will reach out to me and tell me that their dormitories have run out of electricity credit, and so I should help them to buy SIM. There's a very prominent school outside of my constituency in the central region, Cape Coast, who suffer problems. Their entire boys' dormitory is plunged into darkness intermittently because they cannot afford to buy 1,000 cedis worth of electricity credit. I had to embark on a program to equip all the secondary schools in my constituency with sporting items because they didn't have it. There were times when they went for games and people had to play football barefooted. They had to run barefooted. Right. So there are basic fundamental problems. The way to overcome those is to listen to everybody who has a thought to share and distill the best ideas that come up and find a way to implement it on the basis of the consensus that is reached. So when that dialogue is held and the ideas are put forward, they will be put into a melting pot. Of course, one is not bound to take every advice that you get. But if what is said at the forum, the contributions that come, are contributions that can help to improve the system and ensure that ultimately the fundamental reason why the free SHS conversation came up, which is so that no Ghanaian child is left behind. If we can achieve that objective, I don't think that the pathway to doing it is necessarily a problem. You understand the point I'm making? If it is thought that you, Winston, myself, and Raymond here can pay for our children, so we should pay. And that the people in Abuenu or in Predu in Eeki or Romwa or Obokor cannot afford, and so they should be lent a helping hand. Why not? So I think that the way to proceed is not to take entrenched positions and pigeonhole people who express divergent opinion. Ultimately, everybody wants every Ghanaian child to go to school. Now, the contention is, how do we achieve this objective? Some say that there should be a blanket implementation of this thing, whether we have the money or not. Others say, no, tarry a bit. Let us do some means targeting. Let us ensure that those who can afford do not waste resources, so to speak, and that those who really need the help are the ones that we target to achieve it. These are conversations that we need to have, but it has to be had in a free and candid manner, devoid of any fears of pigeonholing and bastardization, simply because your views may not align with others. So the president is open-minded about this and wants to hear the various shades of opinion. But what he can guarantee is that no Ghanaian child is going to be left out on the basis of affordability or the lack of it thereof.
The end fought a certain thinking, which even the past president has said, review meant cancellation. So the NDC consistently reached the point, was not even using the word review.
Sure.
The NDC also said we would improve upon free SHS.
Absolutely.
The expectation is that no matter what you go through, this we would improve upon free SHS is still part of government policy.
Of course, the point is that, Winston, Raymond, who in Ghana today can say boldly that we do not have problems with free SHS? Why do we owe 3 billion Ghana cedis? Why are we unable to feed the students? If everything was kosher, it was smooth sailing, and that there was nothing to worry about. The very idea that we have these problems means that we have to take a look at it again. Why are we having those difficulties that have emerged? The reason is simple, that there is a funding constraint. So how do we work around that to ensure that the objective of the policy is achieved, which is that the schools are well funded, the academic calendar is not disrupted, educational outcomes that are impressive, that are beneficial to us in the long run are achieved, and that every Ghanaian child is catered for one way or another. Now, the contention is how to achieve this.
Yeah.
Now, if a government starts a policy and it is obvious to everybody that there's a problem, chief among which is the inability to mobilize the resources to fund it in the way that it should be funded, I don't see why a conversation around it should lead to notions that the party that is criticizing the way that it's been done wants to cancel it. What would be President Mohammed's interest in depriving Ghanaian children an opportunity to go to school? Indeed, it is the number one duty of the state to ensure that every Ghanaian child has that opportunity. And President Mohammed is committed to doing so. So, no Ghanaian child in any way, shape, or form will be deprived an opportunity to go to secondary school on account of his inability to afford. That is the bottom line.
Can this government also guarantee everybody in this country that we can criticize policy, not only free SHS, but free SHS more importantly,
without suffering any retribution,
without any
Absolutely.
difficulty at
Absolutely.
all, without you seeing us as being opposing to state policy in ways? Or launching a campaign against it.
I am a stickler for free speech. You know, there are those who limit free speech to pleasant speech. That is when you praise me or say nice things about me that should be accepted. I don't believe that anybody who says anything, unless of course a clear red line is crossed, incitement to violence or some other form of infraction or case, should suffer any retribution. You see, speech can be pleasant, it can be harsh, but whether it is harsh or pleasant, nobody should suffer retribution. That is why I have an eternal opposition, even to the way that courts use contempt. I have never agreed with it. In my view, it means that some people are setting themselves above others. Every public official is due for criticism, whether mild or harsh. You may not like it. It may ruin your day. It may get you depressed. But the people in whose name we exercise authority have more than earned the right to say what they feel about our performance or the lack of it. All government officials, whether they are in the executive, they are in parliament. Indeed, during our orientation, we were taken through a presentation, one of which related to contempt of parliament. I had major disagreements with. I don't see why, as a member of parliament, anybody should be dragged to parliament and held in contempt
for being critical,
simply because they've said that, for instance, a law we've passed is useless, or that they do not agree that even parliament should exist. People should be free to express their views. President Mahama is committed to same, and that's why you find that even people who have criticized him severely in the past have been appointed to play some role in this government. Indeed, I read Professor Kwakye Prempeh's post yesterday in recognition of his appointment to chair the Constitution Review Committee, and he made a point that he was quite a critic. I must say that he's a mild critic, but he was a critic nonetheless. There are others in there, Dr. Isi Ansah, who, by the way, is the daughter of PAV Ansah.
Yes, true.
Perhaps the fiercest critic of the PNDC NDC. I don't know anybody who was more critical of PNDC NDC than him. Dr. Isi Ansah was part of Occupy Ghana. She was fiercely critical. Indeed, she was the one, if I'm not mistaken, who held aloft that placard that said that the king was naked during the Occupy Ghana protest. Subsequently, she took part in some public forum symposia and her views. I can bet you that President Akufo-Addo will never give a position of any form to somebody like that in his government. But President Mahama did not have a difficulty. In fact, all the people
that's also a way of winning people over.
No, it's not necessarily a way of winning. It simply means that we are going for
it's another way.
No, we are going for the best and brightest. We do not anticipate that Professor Kwakye Prempeh will suddenly become a sympathizer of the NDC simply because of this. He has gravitas. He's seen it all in life. He doesn't need this to be lured to follow the. I don't think that Dr. Esi Ansah will be tempted to join the NDC because of this.
But Felix,
but the point, the fundamental point, is that under this administration, unless very clear red lines are crossed, nobody's going to suffer retribution for airing their views, whether pleasant or unpleasant.
Another issue people are waiting to hear the president on is illegal mining, Galamsey.
Yes.
Because it was a major campaign promise.
Yes, it is.
We started a campaign in the last, days to the elections. There were a lot of issues here and there because the feeling was that, why are you raising Galamsey? We continued because we wanted something to be done about it. The question has been asked, what is the president going to do? Why hasn't he said anything about it in 14 days? What are his plans? Under which ministry would the next fight be?
Oh, President Mahama is committed to the fight, and it will be a ruthless fight. Admittedly, it has not come up because other matters may have shot up onto the front burner because of the exigencies of the time. But he definitely abhors Galamsey and will be taking firm, stern, decisive action to tackle the problem. In the same way that matters like education, the economy have come up. Galamsey will come up. Of course, 14 days is simply not sufficient to broach every single subject that you campaign on. So I'm sure you appreciate the need to give him some time to settle in and get it.
Will LI 2462 allowing mining in forest reserves be repealed?
Well, I'm not able to say that for the president because he has not had that conversation with me. But I don't think that he has a difficulty with doing away with that LI because it is clearly inimical and it's not beneficial in any way to the people of Ghana.
Now, there was a long list of groups, about 52, that came out with different positions, very tough measures that ought to be taken. Is the NDC going to take some of these tough measures or go for a long approach of reform, all the things you have done?
No, I think that the actions that we take on Galamsey must be comprehensive in nature. You see, we cannot sprinkle some shallow policies on the matter and hope that it vanishes. You see, Galamsey is a deep-rooted problem. In the past, it was done by some frustrated youth who did not have any other employment opportunity in the past. Now, if it had remained just that, I'm sure that by now we would have overcome it. What has happened is that over time, there are powerful people in society spread across the entire strata who are profiting from this and are behind the people doing this. So it has become difficult. It's become hydra-headed. You know, you remove one problem out of the way, another one pops up. What has been lacking is a political will to take action that may even offend persons who support the political party that has produced a president who is taking that action. That is what President Akufo-Addo could not. That's the courage that he could not master. President Mahama has that courage. This is a man who has dealt severely with appointees, including some who were his friends. So he has no difficulty doing what has to be done. He believes in a roots and branches approach. Get rid of the problem comprehensively. Don't window dress. Don't dabble in some PR stunts and create the impression that you are dealing with this when the problem persists.
Talking about a problem persisting, I mean, you signed that statement that, concerning Obuasi. I want to understand why the decision that the company takes care of the injured and facilitates the burial of...
the simplest analogy I can give you, Winston, is as if you are driving and someone crosses you. You hit the person, he falls. Are you going to pause to ponder over whether or not it was his fault or it was yours before you come to his aid? The point is that lives have been lost. People have been critically injured. That has generated significant tensions between the community and the mining company. It is in the interest of Anglo-Gold Ashanti itself that these tensions are doused before the matter can be delved into to determine what happened. I would be surprised if the strategic decision makers in Anglo Gold Ashanti themselves had not made up their minds to do this as a goodwill gesture, to diffuse the tensions, to pave way for a resolution to whatever difficulty or problems are manifesting in the violence that we saw. So I am also aware that when the incident occurred, as part of government's efforts to ensure that the tensions go down, even before we look into the matter, this suggestion was sold to Anglo Gold. Some agreements were. So that statement was not issued in a vacuum. Okay. I believe strongly that the company itself was minded to do it, because I'll be surprised if they don't realize the strategic value of doing that, because they need peace of mind to be able to operate the mine. If every time there are people just across the fence hoping to break into the mines and take it over, they are not going to operate in an atmosphere of peace and candor. So people have misinterpreted that to mean that we have already found Anglo. No, that is not what it is. Okay. We believe that it will significantly help to lessen the tension so we can address the difficulty. But the point is that, you see, for instance,
before you continue, let me just say that we still have Felix Kwakye Ofosu, who's acting presidential spokesperson, a member of parliament for Obuasi Bukwamankese. It's 10 a.m., but we have 10 minutes extension, so we are continuing. Please go ahead.
You see, there's a certain cavalier attitude that we are adopting as a nation towards human life. You see, the sanctity of human life is incontestable. It is not negotiable. There have been too many incidents involving security personnel and, if you like, irate youth that has ended or have ended in needless loss of lives. We went for elections in 2028. People were gunned down. We were told that at the collation center there was some melee, and so the only way out was to gun down people, including 14, 15-year-olds. What possible threat can a 14-year-old girl pose to a collation process, for which reason she should be gunned down? In the 2024 elections, we have learned that another 5 lost their lives. I don't know the exact details, but I've heard that 5 people have died. A few years ago, there was an incident involving some Zongo youth and the police. 7 people were gunned down. Then we woke up one day, the military had carried out a swoop in Ashaman. I was one of the people who publicly criticized it and rounded up any and everybody who they perceived to be a criminal and mistreated them. Now, I can understand the frustration that people feel because of rising incidents of indiscipline and lawlessness and mob action. But despite that, we cannot have a policy where the first resort of security agencies is to gun down people. Because what that may mean in the long run is that, Winston, you can get into a spat with a soldier in traffic or a group of soldiers sitting at a pickup in traffic. They will gun you down and then say that you pulled out a gun. If we do not establish clear operational procedures and refine the rules of engagement to ensure that the use of lethal force is only the very last resort after everything else has failed, we are going to have a crisis on our hands.
Okay.
That is why government wants to look into the matter to make sure that because I've heard the alleged illegal miners say that when they were confronted with a certain level of force, they surrendered. Some have said that they knelt down and raised up their hands to show that they didn't mean any harm, and yet some of their colleagues were gunned down. That is what they are saying. What they are essentially accusing the armed forces of is extrajudicial killings. And any government that is concerned, the primary fundamental responsibility of every government is to secure the safety and security of every citizen. So when you hear that these incidents are happening, you cannot fold your arms and take the Ghana Forces statement, hook, line, and sinker, or Anglo Gold Ashanti statement, hook, line, and sinker, look into it.
Yeah, so I want to come back to you and find out the status of the investigation. When is it starting? When is it?
It started already. The national security.
When is it supposed to end?
Well, we've not given them any time. But I think that
because I want to come back to you and ask, where's the report?
Yeah. Oh no. First of all, the order went out yesterday or the day before. Okay. I think that is only fair, given the circumstances of this situation.
Have you given them a time?
No, we've not given them a timeline. We believe that it will not be unreasonably long. They will not take more time that they need, but it will be done within reasonable limits. We expect that it comes in a couple of weeks so that we are able to know exactly what happened. Mind you, it is not just looking into the matter. We also have to deal with the pressing problem of rising tensions, because you know that after the shooting incident itself, the youth went on rampage, which suggests underlying tensions between the community and the mining firm. That has to be dealt with as part of the resolution process.
Yes.
So I don't think that it is.
And talking about part of the resolution process, don't you think also knowing that, okay, when it comes to the Constitutional Review Implementation Committee, you've given them 5 months.
Yes.
So do you think that would also
But
be
that is a controlled
one
situation.
One minute. Would have also been, interesting, for instance, once you're setting up this committee, you ask them how long it may take them, and you possibly would say within the next 3 months or so. So there's a timeline. At least they know within this period we're likely to get information.
But we cannot paint every situation with the same brush. Circumstances differ. In the constitutional process, it's something that we control. Understand me? There's no threat to anybody. There's no threat to life and property. In this particular instance, there's a serious problem of insecurity. There's the potential for tensions to be stoked. There's a potential for any spark to lead to further violence. So we have to work in ways that achieve the best outcomes. I don't think that rushing the security agencies into producing a report is the answer. The report must be comprehensive. It must deal with all the issues. We want to find out whether it is true that indeed the individuals involved were even illegal minors to begin with, or whether they acted in ways that endangered life and property.
National Security is investigating
that. Yes, they are looking into the matter as we speak. Yes. I've been in constant touch with the National Security Coordinator and the National Security Advisor. I've been in contact with the Anglo Ashanti itself and other stakeholders in the sector to ensure that this matter is dealt with in a manner that does not lead to a recurrence. That for me is even more critical. This thing should not happen again. We should not wake up one day and hear that 5 people have been killed because they rushed into a mine. Yes, we can rush into a mine, but I asked the question. Yesterday I posed the question to your sister station at Empire FM. As far as I know, the punishment for illegal mining is not summary execution. You understand the point I'm making? And as I indicated before, I understand the frustrations that people feel because of the lawlessness and the terrible degradation of the environment. But we cannot allow for a situation where human life begins to mean nothing, and that at the slightest hint of trouble, people must be gunned down. That must be checked. You lose your life only through lawful means if you've gone through a process and your guilt or otherwise has been determined. That is the system we want to establish, even though we appreciate that we need to protect life and property, and that the security of the security services themselves also has to be prioritized. But they have to resort to lethal force only as a last resort. So we want to see whether all the operational procedures were followed, whether the rules of engagement are proper, they have been well thought through to guarantee the safety and security of the very people that these people are supposed to protect. That is what we intend to achieve with this investigation.
Oral.
Yes.
What is government going to do with it? People have raised concerns about this legality. It was formed at the time that President Mahama was president-elect. What is the current status of Oral? Is it being converted into anything else? Are you expecting a report from it? Is it ever going to be dissolved?
I think that was clear. The statement I issued was clear on Oral, that they were a preparatory team. And so they are in the immediate aftermath, even before the elections, people like myself, President Mahama himself, had been inundated with claims and allegations of wrongdoing against various people. In opposition, beyond perhaps making it public and assisting you in the media to shed light on it, there was little that we could do. Once he was voted for, it was necessary to begin work to structure these complaints in a manner that would be beneficial to anybody who takes them over to look into through due process. Now, what was the best way to do this? We needed to establish a system. People should know where they can take what. And there should be a system or mechanism that makes sure that the things that come are substantial. We don't go and waste the time of law enforcement officials. In your private lives, or even in your lives as journalists, how many exposés has your FM not done?
True.
You have been behind some of the biggest exposés. Did you need any law passed to enable you to do so? You don't prosecute. You don't invite anybody for questioning. You don't arrest anybody. All you do is to inform the Ghanaian public and perhaps relevant authorities that you have this information relating to corruption and that they should look into it. That is all that ORA is doing. So I am surprised about the criticism about legality. We have not said anywhere that ORA can invite you, Raymond, and accuse you of doing ABCD and exact retribution against you. They cannot do that. They themselves are aware.
Yeah.
But there's nothing wrong with you, Raymond, waking up one day and taking a thick dossier on what you believe constitutes evidence of wrongdoing to ORA to look into. And I can tell you, they've had hundreds of leads, very substantive leads, not mere allegations. Some of them backed with credible evidence. And in due course, once the Attorney General takes office, he would have capacity to look into these matters, refer some to relevant investigation bodies, and they will look into the. But what would have happened is that we would have made it possible for a more structured approach to be adopted. And mind you, in the immediate aftermath of the election, a fluid situation arose. There is some lacuna. One of the things that perhaps we need to criticize ourselves as a country for is that we appear to be getting it right in terms of the election itself and how we conduct it. But post-election, there's too much of a gap. Nobody knows what to do. The security agencies are basically frozen into inaction. They don't want to offend the incoming government. They are not even sure whether they are staying or they are leaving. So they are unable to deal with many things. Because of that, people can take advantage of that gap and evade justice, evade scrutiny if you don't act quickly. So perhaps going forward, we should have a more structured approach. It appears that the transition bill needs to be improved to take care of the post-election period. Because I have been involved in this will be my second transition. I was involved as a green-eyed young man in 2009 in the transition process. It was a learning curve for me. This time round, I think there's been some improvement. It was less acrimonious and what have you, but there's still more to be done.
Okay.
If we had that system, there wouldn't be the need for this criticism. But I don't think that the critics of oil are being fair. It appears to me that they are setting their own questions and answering. Nobody has been invited. So if you say that they are illegal, what exactly is illegal? So Sami Odami, your producer, cannot walk up to me and say that, Honorable Kwakye Ofosu, I have this information relating to wrongdoing. Do you know where I can take it? There's nothing wrong with that. It is only information gathering. Those who have the power to effect arrest are known. Those who have the power to take people to court and present evidence before a court of competent jurisdiction that wrongdoing has been done and so people should be punished are also there, and they will be handed over the evidence and they will look into it. It is entirely possible that all of the evidence that will be brought will not be found to have any merit and it will be jettisoned. It's also possible that a significant chunk will be deemed meritorious and will be acted upon.
Okay.
So I think that we should wait. No law has been breached, none. And indeed, those who are alleging illegality are unable to point to any law. They only say that oral members should not be speaking publicly. I don't know where that comes from. When did speaking about corruption become an issue?
Felix.
How is it even an issue? I thought that it was Justice Louis Brandes who said that sunlight is the best disinfectant.
Felix,
if you don't speak about corruption, how do you curb it?
Felix,
and why would, where's the final point? Why would anybody be worried if oral members speak about corruption? If you are not corrupt, why are you worried about an allegation of corruption? So I don't think that the criticisms are valid. They are not fair. It appears to me that some MPP members are in a hurry to drape oral in bad clothes so that people, as it were, lose confidence in the process as a means to achieving a certain end further down the line. That's all.
In 30 seconds,
Sure.
Is President Mahama running away from this anti-LGBT?
In fact, I'm surprised
bill?
that you left it so late. You see, I beg of you to give me 2 or 3 more minutes because it's an important point. You see, what happened was that the Catholic Bishops' Conference, I think last week, paid a courtesy call on him. Indeed, I was in the meeting in my capacity as spokesperson. They brought about 5 items. They actually gave us a copy of the matters that they wanted to discuss. Key amongst them was the LGBTQ thing. They sought to know about the status and what the position of the president was. They also lamented the scrapping of the teaching of religious and moral education in the school curricula. They also spoke about the same thing I was talking about, the gaps in the post-election process, which leads to some of the difficulties that we have encountered. And I think 2 other issues. President Mahama, in response, said that it is regrettable that President Akufo-Addo, through some injunctions in the courts, was unable to assent to the bill. Because of that, the bill has expired. That means that the process has to be restarted. Critically enough, he added, and if you look at the tape, if you read the tapes, you see, I'm sure your correspondents were there. He said that he believes that this time it should not be a private member's bill, but it should be a government-sponsored bill. That's what he said. How does a man who wants to run away from this bill insist that his government should give weight to the bill when he goes back to Parliament for processing? And then he agreed with the lamentation of the Catholic bishops over the scrapping of the study of RME in schools. He said that if religious and moral education were still on our books and was being taught in school, perhaps there would not be a conversation about LGBT because we will hone the right caliber of people imbued with the proper values.
So the state would now send that bill to Parliament.
So when it goes back, it will have the weight of the state. It will be a government-sponsored bill, not a private member's bill. President Mahama made it clear.
So the state will send that bill to
That is what President
Parliament.
Mahama told the Bishops' Conference. Catholic Bishops' Conference.
And we should expect it when?
Well, of course, again, it's only been 2 weeks.
No,
it takes quite a bit of time.
Yeah,
but I'm sure that eventually
come back. You see, the good thing is that
one timeline so that we can hold it.
He gave us 120 days. Hold on a
Listen.
minute. 120
Yes.
days. You see, nobody has complained about
Because the time has not elapsed. Absolutely.
to the
Even
final
today's
day.
conversation about the final list of
Yeah.
something, you are unable to say anything because today is only the 21st.
Exactly. So
the day has not ended.
So good. So I like the timelines, so that I hold
Yes,
you accountable to the time that you
Yeah,
gave
but
me.
of course, the timelines will be set by the boss himself, the president. Once he does that, I will be more than happy to let the world know. As we speak, he has not discussed timelines, but it will not be. If you look at the pace at which he's going, this constitutional review thing, he's done it in his second week.
Yeah.
He has set up other systems and mechanisms. In fact, there are some that he did even before he became president. So it gives an indication of a man who wants to get things done quickly. So he will not delay unduly, except that due process has to be followed.
Our time is up. Thank you very much, Felix Kwakye, who is acting presidential spokesperson and MP for Abra Asebu Kwame.